Hello, Brandon. I hope you're doing well. I found more time today, so I'm using it, excuse me, to do your forecast. I'm very excited to share this with you because it's a very powerful forecast. Um, I'm looking for your question. Since you know a good bit about astrology, um, I'm going to share this a little differently than I do somebody who knows nothing about astrology. Um, excuse me, allergies. Um, I'm going to go beyond the year that you asked for because you have two major aspects going on that overshadow everything else in your life. And you probably know where I'm going with that. Okay, I'm going to start with your question. Please compare my natal chart to the planets and specifically Chiron. What we do is we play our, okay, uh, we take the transiting planets and compare them to the natal chart, not the other way around, okay? But I think that's what you're asking. And specifically Chiron on 2/11/21. What does it mean and how do I go about implementing a course of action? I don't use Chiron. I think I wrote you that. I haven't found that it works all the time. Certainly not the way they claim it does. There's a lot, even the name, the definition of Chiron, the wounded healer, kind of smacks of martyrdom and self-pity. And I think that may be why people have been attracted to it. So I don't use it. However, what I'm going to share with you is so much bigger than that. There is no comparison. But on the 11th of February, it was a new moon. And it fell, of course, you probably know this, in your 10th house of career, and it was squaring your Saturn moon. Now, anything that does, any transiting planet, any event that triggers, quote unquote, your first house planets is going to be huge. And let me mention this, the planets don't make us do anything. They reflect where we are at. So it's not that you can, this is why it's difficult. One of the reasons why it's difficult to predict what someone is going to do, because number one, they have free will. We always have free will as to how we're going to use these aspects. The choice is ours. Now, on this day, on the new moon, in your 10th house, Mercury squared your ascendant. It was separating, but Mars was squaring the midpoint between your ascendant and Saturn. So this is you, it's personal ascendant. And Pluto was, transiting Pluto was trining Saturn and the moon, but it was forming the conjunction with Mars. And Pluto sitting on Mars is getting ready to explode. It's all or nothing. So this was a new, anything you do now is major. And when I say major, when I say now, it's not just 2021 or 2022, but well into 2023 for some of these aspects. I want to share the two most important things that I'm seeing in your forecast for the next couple of years. And I know you ordered an annual chart of 12 months, but I have to take it a little further. All right? First of all, Pluto, total transformation, out with the old, in with the new. Saturn has already crossed your midheaven. And when Saturn's on the midheaven, you're at the top of your career, you're at the top of your game. Well, here comes Pluto, all or nothing, death and rebirth, transformation, transmutation. It's sitting right up here on Mars and the midheaven. Pluto on Mars says, all right, we're about to totally do an out with the old, in with the new. There will be nothing left. And on that foundation, we will rebuild. Pluto to me is secrets and sex and death and rebirth. But it manifests on so many different levels that when other people's money, which is the mundane manifestation. Pluto is the symbolic death and rebirth of the phoenix rising on its own ashes. That's what's going to be going on in your career, in your public image. I love it. Okay. That's going to be going on for the next couple of years. So anything I tell you that deals with a short period of time, like a year, is colored by Pluto. And Pluto on the midheaven is a once in a lifetime transit. Okay? Pluto on the midheaven, Pluto on the ascendant, Pluto on the IC, Pluto on the descendant. Not everybody goes through these. For example, if let's say somebody has their natal Pluto in the 10th house. Well, Pluto has an orbit, a complete orbit of, oh shoot, I just forgot. It's either 248 years or 284 years, but it's over 200 years. So most people are not going to have a Pluto return. Duh. So when it hits a point in the natal chart, it's huge. That is what is going on this year, next year, the next couple of years. I'm not really concerned with a short-term aspect unless it's triggering, quote unquote, triggering what Pluto's bringing about. That's the first planet. The second one is Uranus. Now, I have had Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto crossing my ascendant. And so I've experienced all of them, and I can speak, I'll tell you about Uranus on the ascendant, another once in a lifetime aspect that not everybody goes through. Now, Pluto, all or nothing, Uranus, everything. Uranus is the rebel, the great awakener, and it has been going through your 12th house, as you know. Now, you have what I call the Trinity, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, the big three, all in Taurus, which tells me that you wanted to make sure that you work through what Taurus has to teach you in this lifetime. When you have your Sun, Moon, and Ascendant in the same sign, it's a triple whammy. It'll get the astrologer's attention. It'll get the astrology students' attention, which I think is really, really cool. It's saying a lot. All right. So Uranus has been going through your 12th house since you've been in preparation since Uranus entered your 12th house several years ago, as it transited your Venus, your anti-vertex, and your Mercury. All of which are in Aries. And so that would have started the fire going. That would have started it. Now, with Venus, your chart ruler, it happened right away because the chart ruler has an enormous amount of power. But for you, it's hidden in the subconscious. So you would get your answers through meditation or dreams, which is terrific. Okay, Uranus sat on your sun earlier this year, um, and last year too, if I remember correctly. I don't look back, uh, but when it sits on your sun, your ego, that's the sun, undergoes a liberation, a rebellion. In your case, that rules the fifth house of fun. It rules the fifth house of children. It rules the fifth house of sexual sex, and it's hidden in the 12th. Anything hidden in the 12th is private. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Uh, However, Uranus is on your ascendant, approaching your ascendant. And when it goes retrograde very shortly, it's going to go retrograde in 13 Taurus, not 15. And what I've learned about Uranus and the transit of Uranus is you have to wait until it's exact for it to manifest. So if you're sitting there looking at your chart saying, well, it's within 2 degrees on whatever date that occurs, I don't have it in front of me, but I've counted it and I'm going to go over it with you. Yeah, it goes retrograde July and August. It goes retrograde in August. It's within 1 degree, excuse me, 1 degree of your ascendant. Um, and then it backs up. So you will have a sense of it because that 12th house is speaking to you all the time. And it will be when it goes direct again and sits exactly on your ascendant, which will be May of 2022, that's going to be wild. It's going to be great. And then, of course, it sits on Saturn and the moon. So you are ready just with these two planets. I've got the midheaven here, the ascendant here. Actually, for you, I should do it this way, the ascendant here, because there is a major change in your whole public image, what the world sees of you. This can be your role with a parent. It can be your whole career undergoing a transformation. And Uranus on the ascendant liberating you. When Uranus sits on your ascendant, you become more magnetic, more charismatic than ever before. People, you're just a magnet, like I said, magnetic, literally. People look at you like they've never seen you before, and it might make you uncomfortable. Um, Although with all those planets around your ascendant, you may welcome it because you can deal with it. I remember walking into different rooms, a restaurant perhaps, a friend's house, and people just looking at me like they had never seen me before. And I kept thinking, are my genes open? What's going on here? Why are they looking at me this way? And one of my astrology teachers, this was many, many years ago, said, I saw you on TV and I knew that Uranus was on your ascendant. And I said, you have to tell me, what does that mean? Because we didn't have internet then. We had it like this much. So information was not forthcoming. So I looked out at what I had noticed about people's reactions to me, and I realized that I changed my uh, clothing style, my hairstyle, my lipstick shade. Um, I took myself more seriously um, and felt freer to express the real me. That, my friend, is what you're going through and will be going through. This is awesome. Now, of course, Uranus is going to be sitting on Saturn. It's going to liberate you. And I'll tell you what you were liberated from, and I'll tell you what it's going to do for you, to you, with you. And all of that's in quotes. It doesn't do anything to you or for you. You do it because you are ready for it. And I want to recommend a book to you that you might find really enjoyable. You may already be familiar with it. It's called Spirit Hacking. And I'm reading it for the second time. The first time I read it very slowly because the guy who wrote it, Shaman Durek, oh, here he is. Just marvelous, absolutely marvelous. So the first time I read it, I underlined in screaming yellow and took notes. This time I'm doing it in bright pink uh, because he has, I just couldn't absorb all of it at once. He speaks to you. He's not way up here. He uses regular, ordinary language. I highly recommend it to you. So, all right, now I was talking about Uranus crossing the ascendant. Uranus crossing the sun, I'm going to back it up to that because if I remember correctly, it was there earlier this month. No, it was on your sun. Well, it's in 6 Taurus and your sun is 5. This really started in 2020. I only have the ephemeris for the 2020 to 29, but you've been feeling Uranus's impact because it's been in your 12th house for so long. Okay. So we're talking about a year ago, March and April 2020. Uranus being so slow, it moves forward a little bit and then it goes retrograde and goes back over the same place. Then it moves forward a lot and then it goes backward, retrograde, and might still hit the same place. So it's the last go round that really tells it. So now that I've lost my place here. So Uranus is back at 6 Taurus, and it goes direct in 6, or it went direct on Valentine's Day, all right? Which is 3 days after the date that you wanted me to look at, but it's close enough so that there was a major shift in you. It involves the message that your father gave you, which is to be the power behind the throne, not to be out front. Okay, sun is daddy, sun in the 12th house, behind the throne, to work on the spirit plane. And this is why I mentioned Shaman Durek, because he shares his story. He's amazing. And so your whole attitude about yourself changed, and what your father taught you to do. It either liberated you in order to do that or liberated you from that. And when I say liberated you, it did nothing. That's air quotes. Okay, you did it. So then when it sits on your ascendant, this is when you are sparkle plenty. You are so magnetic. The old you is liberated, and you show that new you to the world because on the ascendant, it expresses it. So your whole approach, your wardrobe, your appearance, your attitude about yourself can undergo a change, a liberation. I love it. I wish I had appreciated it more. I was young. I couldn't appreciate it the way I would now, but what are you going to do? Okay, then for the next couple of years, remember I told you this forecast goes beyond the 12 months that you requested. Remember, Pluto was sitting on Mars too during this time, saying, bust loose. And once again, with Mars behind the midheaven, you're supposed to express your ambitions, your career ambitions privately. You're the one who goads the person in authority. You're the butt kicker, okay? Uh, Whoever is in charge, whoever is the leader, you're there to encourage them, which is very cool. Um, so a lot of the work that you do is on the inner planes and simply away from prying eyes. As Uranus, over the next couple of years, sits on Saturn, that Saturn, of course, is your ancestry, your bloodline, your heritage. That Saturn rules the should and ought to authority figures in your life, like grandparents. It's your culture. And so you should, you ought to, you have to, you're obligated to being a grown up. That would have kicked into place when you were 8 years old. 8 years old. And so you're supposed to be the grown up. And this could have been between what I'm fixing to say now and your 12th house. You might have experienced a great deal of sorrow and sadness. That's the 12th house. Anything in the 12th makes you disguised Pisces. So you're sorrow and sadness kid. All right. Saturn conjunct the moon. Moon is mommy, moon is family. Um, there's a very strong emotional attachment to being that strong, able-bodied, able-minded person, and you're obedient. Now, wherever the moon is where our mother tells us to look for our emotional security. That's within yourself. And so with the Holy Trinity, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, all in Taurus, with Saturn that says, whoa, slow it down. You're ready to bust loose. And you want to watch out because there's a certain amount of ego involved with first house planets. First house is a disguised Aries. And so with the ego undergoing this liberation and the ascendant, that's awesome. It's going to be very powerful when Uranus crosses your Saturn and the moon. And I'll tell you when those dates are. And you will be liberated from the shoulds and ought tos and have tos. You're very young, so you'll want to make notes, keep a journal, dear diary, dear journal, so that you can go back and review. This is a major time in your life, and not everybody gets Uranus crossing the ascendant. Not everybody gets Pluto crossing the midheaven. And not everybody gets them at the same time. It's just awesome. So yes, I have to agree with you. You have been undergoing major changes and will continue to for several years because it doesn't happen overnight. You are removing your programming. My book, Move Into the Magic, will help you, if you choose to read it, can help you release your movie, the movie of your life, your programming. I'm working on a second book called Take Back Your Life, which right now is for predominantly women. But the concept is the same. The only reason I'm writing about women is because I am one and I know women's programming. I know what male programming is, but I haven't lived it. I have to live it to be able to express it. You know what I mean? Okay, now, these two planets are the significant ones for the next couple of years. And they're going to color everything in your forecast. And one day can amplify that. But boy, oh boy, oh boy, have you got some fabulous aspects. So, Pluto will be sitting on your Mars midheaven all during 2021, and it's going to be trining the Saturn moon. Whoops, Saturn moon, so that you will still be able to handle your role as the appointed authority figure in your own life. Even though Saturn rules authority figures, it rules your midheaven. With Pluto trine the Saturn moon, this is of great help to you when Uranus is sitting on your Saturn moon, which it will later on, of course, because it's going to be in your first house for several years. So, Pluto on the midheaven, Pluto conjunct Mars, which is, I'm going to throw out that Mars. I'm going to rebuild it on a higher level, and trining the Saturn moon, which means you're obedient to the messages from your ancestors and your mother and your mother's side of the family. That's going to continue through 2023. Now you see why I said this is a huge forecast, and it's well past a 12-month forecast, but I had to give you the extent of it. Now, of course, Pluto's going to be in that 10th house for several years, all right? Uranus is going to stay in your first house for several years. It's got to get into 13 Gemini 51 before it moves into your second house. And then look out, because you'll change your values, you'll change the way in which you earn your money. It's all liberation, and it triggers rebellion, quote unquote, triggers rebellion. All right. So Uranus, of course, sat on your sun this month, February, and it too is going to just, as I said, it's going to be there transforming you, liberating you through 2025. I mean, to me, this is so exciting to be able to give you this longer roadmap than you expected. And I've still got more stuff to share with you that is unusual and marvelous. All right. Now, so Saturn's in your 10th house. Okay, it's in your 10th house. And it's helping establish your public image the way you want it to be, because Saturn is a little more traditional, practical, logical, but it's in Aquarius. Now, it rules Aquarius, of course, it co-rules Aquarius. And of course, it rules Capricorn. So it's been really empowered by being in these signs, again, air quotes. Jupiter is also in your 10th house, expanding it, saying, let's expand, let's get bigger. Saturn saying, whoa, slow it down. And so Jupiter is going to be moving back and forth from your 10th to your 11th, from your 11th back up to your 10th, on and off through, well, at least April of 2022, which would be a little past the year's forecast that you ordered. So you've got Saturn up there in the 10th. You've got Jupiter up there in the 10th. And remember, Saturn is man's law, Jupiter is God's law, and they're expressing in your career. Hello, love it. You can blend the two. So everything else is secondary to that. Now I'm going to back the chart up to last November 2020, and December 2020, because we had two eclipses, one in November, one in December. And they're very interesting. The November 30th eclipse was in 8.5 Gemini. So it sat in your first house, triggering, quote unquote, triggering. You may get sick and tired of me hearing quote unquote. So I apologize, but you know what I mean. It made a beautiful trine to Uranus in your sixth house. So your job looks good, but it's in opposition. Since it's in opposition to your Neptune, Jupiter, you're pulling away from relationships that are not going the way you would like them to. You're pulling away from relationships that are not delivering what they implied they would. And it's just with Neptune and Jupiter in the seventh, you put out your first house, people see your seventh. First house makes you strong as an ox, determined. Neptune obfuscates everything. And there it is, next to Jupiter, which expands everything. And so these two both rule Pisces, as you probably know. And so there's a lot of wishful thinking or idealization or fantasy in the way people see you and the way you see them. Okay? Neptune is escape or divine inspiration. The choice is yours. Whatever it is, it's a lot of it because both Neptune and Jupiter, of course, are in Sagittarius, which is truth. And with Jupiter in Sag, you are absolutely looking for truth. And people see you as both spiritual and truthful, which is another reason why I thought of this book for you to read. Okay, so this eclipse said, I'm doing it my way. By the way, we feel the effects of an eclipse at least a week before it occurs. We feel those influences till the next pair come along, which are usually about 5 or 6 months later. But the eclipse is strongest 3 to 4 months after it occurs. All right? Which is now. December, we had an eclipse that sat in your 8th house. This is the psychic realm. This is since it rules secrets, there's a part of you that wanted secrecy, privacy. Anytime you've got anything in the 8th, you want to be alone. Your nodes were triggered beautifully. Your Mercury, which helps your career and your home situation. This eclipse was beautifully trine Mercury so that the messages you're getting, even from the other side, when you commune with spirit, are they're playing well with each other. This eclipse quincunxing your Saturn moon, and I'm giving you these aspects because you're asking an astrological question about Chiron, so I'm giving you more information than I would give anybody who knew nothing about astrology. You're readjusting that message that you got from your cultural programming and your mommy. Okay? And this eclipse squared Pluto in that 5th house, and that triggered rebellion. Fortunately, because Pluto is rebellion too, fortunately, Pluto is part of an exquisite grand trine, as you know, in Earth. Pluto, Mars, Saturn, Moon. And these planets do play well with other children and at least with each other. Awesome. These eclipses, of course, are at their peak. Let's see. February, March, and April. Now, Mercury went direct yesterday. I know I don't have to describe Mercury retrograde to you. If you're asking about Chiron, you know about Mercury retrograde. We will be in the shadow of the retrograde till March 13th. When I For years, I used to say, I didn't know about the shadow. I didn't know what it was. I used to say to people, you know, it feels like Mercury's still retrograde, even though it's gone direct. And at some point along the line, somebody said, oh, that's the shadow of the retrograde. So I was able to put a name on what I was feeling for years, years and years and years. So while it's safe to start new projects, my suggestion is to wait as long as you can till Mercury gets out of the shadow on March 13th. Now, let me tell you what's going on, as I'm sure you know. Let me double check here something I want to look at. I don't, my handwriting is atrocious, so I always have to look at the ephemeris to double check because I can't trust my own handwriting. Okay, uh, on the 7th and 8th, excuse me, I'm lying. On the 4th, 5th, and 6th of February, Mars crossed your ascendant. I'm giving you a little leeway on the transiting Mars only because you would have felt it. You felt it, I'm sure, a week ahead. And remember I said, whenever the midheaven or ascendant are activated, and to me, the strongest aspect is the conjunction. So here's Mars, conjunct the ascendant. You ready to jump out of your skin. Um, and I always tell people, look at your chart. When Mars is on your ascendant or Uranus, God forbid, alert your friends. Stay away. I'll be fine in a couple of days because you just ready to explode. Use it constructively. So I hope you hit the ground running at that early part of February. The problem is that Mercury was retrograde. So it might have been very frustrating to you because you're hitting the ground running, you want to get things going, and Mercury says, oh, we're going to just mess everything up for you. So that's a terribly frustrating thing. However, from the 20th to the 24th, Mars is going to sit on your Saturn moon. Now remember, you've got Pluto squaring it. Anytime these two areas, I'm so sorry, anytime these two areas are triggered, midheaven and ascendant, or planets in the first house, it's powerful for you. It's set up, it's ready to go. And that's one of the reasons I know that propelled you to contact me on this. All right, let's move forward. Oh, and Neptune's sitting in the 11th house, you know, dreaming a little dream. Good. May and June, 2 more eclipses. Remember, everything I'm saying is overshadowed by the Pluto and Uranus, which to me is so exciting. I'm not sure that the fixed Taurus in you is really thrilled with that because it's a feeling very often of losing control. You know, the fixed signs are all merging with each other, all merge energies with each other, Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius. So I think it's very exciting. It is a new life. All right, but I'm getting ahead of myself. May 26th, we're going to have an eclipse that sits on your Neptune Jupiter in the 7th house. This can bring the public to you. It can, if you are partnered with anybody, it can reinforce the relationship, the dream of the ideal partnership. It can help you get out there and be with people who want to put you on an altar. Okay? They want to build an altar under you. They will tend to do that. the first time I realized when that happened to me, I didn't like it. Because if you're up on an altar, a pedestal, there's only one direction in which you can go, and that's to fall. And so I put it out to the universe. I didn't want to be worshiped and adored. I wanted to be loved. And I got that. That's what I got. So I'm happy with that. Okay. Now your Venus is beautifully triggered, which means there can be love. And with Venus, your chart ruler, the ruler of the ascendant is the ruler of the chart. You're able to love yourself. And this is beautiful. If there is a relationship, it may be a private one at this time. See, I don't know. I don't know your social status. And this one, quincunx, is your sun. So you're kind of adjusting your ego in order to be with other people. The other people are calling the shots. This is great. We get the shadow of the Mercury, however, begins May 15th before this eclipse. Mercury goes retrograde on the 30th. Good grief, here we go. Hurry up and wait. And this particular retrograde takes place in your second house of money, whereas the retrograde and direct and all of that we are now in, the shadow of the retrograde, was in your 10th and 11th houses, 10th being career. Remember, Pluto's on the midheaven. All right. Mercury will go direct June 22nd, again in your second house. And the shadow will end July 7th, again in your second house. You have an eclipse in your second house on July 10th. Double whammy. Okay. This is great from the standpoint of the nodes, because it trines and sextiles the nodes. So the career looks good, the home picture looks good. It's sextile Mercury, great communication from the other side, and you can create money. Love it. These eclipses will be at their peak August, September, and October. Now we're moving up to a time. When I saw this in your chart, I could hardly stand it. I was so excited. Okay, but I'm getting ahead of myself. September of this year, 2021, Mercury enters the shadow of the retrograde on September 7th. It sits on your Uranus in your sixth house. Rebellion, busting loose, psychic ability, psychic phenomena, computers, electronics, health. This is what is triggered. I love it. I love it. Now, Mars is going to be sitting on that Uranus on September 30th. And remember what I said about Mars on Uranus? It's a get on your Harley and ride thing. It's like, I'm over this. I'm through this. So channel your energy. Don't stuff it. But just be aware. You just stay away from sharp objects and guns. I'm kind of being silly, but that's how you feel. Very explosive. And you can feel this in your work and or in your health. There can be a liberation. This can be wonderful. And there can be a change in plans across the board when Mars sits on Uranus. All right. But Mercury is retrograde during this time, right? All right. So it's in the Mercury enters the shadow of the retrograde September 9th and sits on Uranus. Fortunately, that's before Mars hits. Okay. Mercury goes retrograde in your sixth house on the 27th. Mars does its thing with Uranus on the 30th. Mercury goes direct on Uranus on October 19th. And it comes out of the shadow November 2nd. So it's going to be a very intense, angry, impatient, busting loose retrograde for you. And as if that were not enough, we have the second, we have a pair of eclipses, excuse me, a pair of eclipses that occur, one in November and one in December. They are very much like the eclipses that we had November of 2020. In fact, they're very close. Not so much the November 19th eclipse, but no need to compare. The thing I love about this November 19th eclipse, that's 2021 this year, is that it sits on your Saturn moon. Now, remember I said anything that triggers that Saturn moon, boom, everything that Saturn moon is supposed to teach you is activated. Now, whenever you have an eclipse on your sun or your moon or your ascendant, it is a new life eclipse. It's not a new chapter, it's a whole new life. It's a second chance. It can be a 20th chance. It's another chance. And the effects of the eclipse last at least a year. Not till the next pair come along. It can be a year to 2 years because it's a new life. Your Saturn and Moon, as I described them, mommy and culture. Saturn, I'm holding back. I'm the boss. I'm doing it my way. Saturn is fear and restriction, unless it's functioning on its highest level, which is responsibility. And my definition of responsibility is respond to your ability as a leader, wherever Saturn is. It's in your first house. Be your own leader. Now, Saturn rules the older cultural carriers, our bloodline. This is you saying, I'm creating a new me. And of course, the moon. Saturn rules your 10th, the moon rules your 4th. So your career and the foundation of your life are activated. With Uranus on it, on those two planets, liberated from it. Did I mention that I'm validating everything that you've been picking up? All right, this eclipse is trine Pluto and trine Mars and the midheaven. So that gorgeous, grand trine in your birth chart is triggered, and it is absolutely a new career for you, new job if you choose to get a new one. It is a new start for you, and it's going to be with you for at least a year. Mark my words. Mars moves into your seventh house on the 22nd of November, shortly thereafter the eclipse. And that puts you out there with other people, meeting new people. I love it. And remember, Jupiter's moving back and forth between 10 and 11, 10 and 11. Second eclipse, December 4th. This one is very much like the eclipse that we had December 14th of 2020. It's within just a couple of degrees of it. Let me see. I don't like to look back, but I have to because it's so unique. And this is transformation. It's other people's money on a mundane level. It's a resurrection of you. It is. It is beautifully trine your Mercury. So the psychic area is triggered by the eclipse. Triggered. And it's trine Mercury in the 12th of the subconscious. It's quincunx the Saturn moon. So you're tweaking that role that you had. Saturn is a wall, it builds a wall around you. With Uranus, when it crosses it, that wall comes tumbling down. And this eclipse helps it, of course. And Pluto is squared by this eclipse. And so this can trigger issues over joint finances, over your values versus other people's values, etc. Now, in December of this year, Mercury enters the shadow of the retrograde on the 29th. So it's after the eclipse. It goes retrograde January 14th in your 10th house, career. I love it. Remember, you got that new life eclipse. It just helps bring everything forward. Mercury goes direct February 4th in your 9th house. So you're seeing a much bigger picture. Mercury ends the shadow. It comes out of the shadow. End of February. I didn't mark the date down. Let me look here. Oh, it's 2022. That's fine. February 24th. Yeah. Cool. All right. A little more. A little bit more. Saturn in your 10th house is going to be squaring your first house planets, which means as you move, as Saturn sits in your 10th house of leadership, it is squaring, it's giving you a problem with being the leader, because your natal Saturn's in the first house and it's in the 10th by transit. And so it's fighting with you and your programming about being the grown up, being the old head on young shoulders, being responsible, the should and ought to, you should be strong. This, all the shoulds and ought tos. And then the emotional, oh, and my mother told me to take care of myself. All the programming, all right? And remember, Pluto's going over your midheaven and Mars during all this. So, as we move into 2022, Saturn in the 10th is going to be squaring your Saturn moon on and off all during 2022. Again, I know that this is a little beyond what you thought it was going to be time-wise, but I want to share this with you. All right, Saturn's going to sit on your north node in 2022 and 2023. This is really cool from a standpoint of bringing that north node into fruition, because the north node is that area of life, wherever it falls, in which you have your greatest success and your greatest spiritual growth. And there it is in your 10th house in Aquarius. I love it. All right. Okay, I told you about Mercury retrograde January 14th. It goes direct February 4th and comes out of the shadow. As I looked up, okay, we did that. Saturn sits on your north node, helping your career. Mars is going to sit on your Mars midheaven. Mark this down on your calendar, because there's Pluto sitting there too. So Mars and Pluto are both going to be up there, giving it hell. March 5th, it sits on 1st through 5th. Mars, you have a Mars return, it sits on Mars. And the midheaven. Then Mars sits on your north node, and that helps you move forward. And hang on. I can't read my handwriting, sweetheart. I am so sorry. I'm looking for this now. 2022, March. 2022. Give me a second here. I always say that my handwriting is a holdover from an ancient Chinese incarnation, which cracks me up. Here we go. Because, it's a joke, but I'm not really joking. Okay. It sits on Mars the last day of February, first day of March. All right, cool. I should probably write it down, but I'm not going to talk about it again because I got better things to talk about. As we move forward, and this is past the year, but I had to share this with you. You remember that new life eclipse that you got November 19th? That's not the only new life eclipse you're going to have. In 2022, April 30th, you have another new life eclipse. This one sits on your sun ascendant. I don't know what the odds are of two eclipses falling very close to one another. This happens often enough for me to take note, but not often enough to say this, how often it occurs. In other words, it's not that usual. It sits on your sun and ascendant, reinforcing everything we've said, and Uranus is sitting there. Saturn is sitting there. No, Uranus is sitting there. Saturn's sitting on your north node, pardon me. Uranus is sitting on your Saturn moon, which it will through 2025, and it quincunxes your Uranus in the sixth house. So there's a big adjustment, big change in your daily work activities, whatever they happen to be. This new life eclipse, you will feel, I want to say halfway through April, all right? And what you're going to do is remind yourself that the previous new life eclipse, which was November 11th, November 19th, is still operative. So you have two new life eclipses. I get very excited when I see these going on at the same time. Now, the April 30th eclipse takes place in your 12th house, where you feel very comfortable, but it also kickstarts your ascendant. And this is really powerful. I just love it. Let me see if I have anything else on this. I was almost tempted to look forward and see when else you had any new life eclipses because they're so gorgeous. All right. 2022, here we go. This eclipse is in 10 Taurus. So it's at the midpoint between your sun and your ascendant. It pulls them both in. I allow a 5-degree orb on eclipses. So it's sitting, there it is. It's sitting between the two. Midpoints are incredibly powerful. You may already know that. So it's going to keep on keeping on. So, my dear friend, I couldn't wait to do this recording when I saw what was going on in your chart, because I set up the chart ahead of time, and then I take it on a first come, first served basis. And I usually have a stack like this of charts to read, for which I'm very grateful, but it's never ending. And that's why I always say, give me at least a week to get back to you. Just before the holidays, before Christmas, I said to people ordering readings, give me 10 days to 2 weeks. I mean, it was that far out. So I have thoroughly enjoyed looking at your magnificent forecast, um, and knowing that you are in tune. I'm sure I have validated a lot of things that you've suspected were about to happen. It's going to be big. How big? As big as you choose it to be, Brandon. Okay? You've got 2 new life eclipses, and they don't even start for a while. So I'm going to send this along to you with my blessing. Whatever you're doing, keep on keeping on. And my blessing is this: may the stars shine brightly on you and yours in the future. All my best to you. Now, if I can get, there we go. Bye for now.